All right. I try to give him a cue and let him know, hey, we're going on.
And then
he just starts randomly talking before our music is over.
Don't turn my mic on. That's all I got to say.
All right. Good morning and welcome to PrepperCon Radio. As usual, I'm Scott, and we've got the prepared guy here.
Shane is my name.
Shane is his name, and prepping is his game.
And a few other things.
And we've got a special guest who actually was at our inaugural PrepperCon last year, and she's back today. Beuna, you are awesome. Anyone that is like legit gardening is a hero to me because I can only grow like 2 or 3 things.
Tomatoes.
I would say at a novice level of keeping them alive and then actually being able to eat and can off of it. I'm really good at 2 things. Kale, I can grow that all day long, but that's easy.
Yummy.
And tomatoes. And tomatoes are amazing. We did salsa last year, but your website, gardeninspire.com, helps a lot. But your class, I got to see just like a tiny segment as I was rushing off to another thing about edible landscape. Absolutely gets me excited because I just bought another home. We sold ours last year, but I'm like, okay, where do I put my raspberries? Where do I put my blueberries? Where do I put my chives? Like, where do I put all the different things in my yard so that it looks like a cool landscape, but it's just all garden and usable?
Yeah, I have so many questions for you today.
Okay.
We're excited to have you. Tell us, before we jump into those thought-provoking questions, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into gardening, and what inspired you to write your books?
Well, I grew up with parents who gardened. My dad had grown up on a farm, and so we gardened, but there were only specific things we grew. Corn, tomatoes, peas.
Staples.
And I would say, well, why can't we grow this? Well, the growing season's too long. That requires, or it'll get bugs in it or whatever. My parents grew organically, but they didn't call it that. That's just what they did. And so I grew up that way. I'm an organic gardener for a lot of different reasons. I went into horticulture for my degree. I love plants. I kind of surprised my mother by that because when we were called out of bed to go plant peas or weed, it was like, oh, do we have to do that? You know,
well, I think that's normal for every kid, right? As soon as you're called out of bed, you're in a bad mood. I think I'm still that way as an adult.
Well, and I think one thing that helps, I'm grateful for that experience, but I think it's great if kids have some say in an area where they can decide what they want to grow. So they can kind of have that experience. So I'm also a certified square foot garden instructor, and I gave each of my children their own square foot garden, and they got to choose what they wanted to plant. And they planted it and tended it and harvested it, the whole thing.
What does that mean, square foot garden?
So it's a type of raised bed gardening where the beds are divided into square feet. So you plant so much of whatever in that square foot. So, for example, you can plant one cabbage in a square foot. You can plant 16 carrots in a square foot. It takes up a lot less space than traditional row gardening, and it's a lot easier.
I love easier. I'm all about easier.
And so after I had my degree, I was going to be a landscape designer because I like art also, and that could combine the two. And then after working with people, I decided what I really like to do is show them how to do things. And I had a booth at a farmer's market, and a man came up to me and said, I'll pay you $5 to pick your brain. And so I said, okay.
All day long, yeah.
And then he said, if you ever teach a class, I want to come. And so that kind of got me started in the teaching, and I really enjoyed it. And so besides one-on-one in people's yards, I teach classes.
And you've been doing this for about 20 years?
Well, I've been an organic gardener and for about 25, well, most of my life, and I'm a lot older than that. But there was a brief period where I didn't know better.
We'll just say you're 31.
Same age as us. We're all the same age.
No. But anyway, so I started my landscape design business back around 2000. And then I was here in Utah, and then I moved to Alaska for a while. And I didn't have my business up there. I didn't know how long I'd be there, but I worked for a landscaping company, which gave me another type of experience. Then when I moved back down here in 2007, that's when I kind of went in more to the coaching.
Nice.
Very cool.
That is awesome. I love when you can actually get involved in something that you're good at, you love, but then also can help other people. That's kind of what prompted us to start PrepperCon. And then when I met Shane, it's funny because he and I spent an hour on the phone the first time I called him. I'm like, hey, I see that you do containers. And he's just like, excuse me, I want to do an event.
Tell me more about it.
Tell me. And I'm like, okay, you're my new best friend. And, and it grew. And he's the same. Like, just like you want to help people. You want to instruct. And it's something that people are losing those skills. People are losing the ability to do things that 20, 30 years ago was commonplace. I mean,
well, it's just easy to go to the store and get whatever, right?
Right. And we're so busy. I mean, that's the main problem in our house. We're so busy with life, with work, with sport. I mean, sports and talents and so forth, that all you have time to do is open a box of mac and cheese and throw that on the range, rather than go out and spend quality time with your kids in the garden and grow your own food.
I like that quality time. I think we're missing, as a society, that quality time. Work is getting busier and busier. I mean, I work 75 minimum hours a week.
And the work that we do, we could work all day, every day.
Yeah. And I think the biggest challenge is, you can go get food at the grocery store. You can go, get food from your neighbor or farmer's market, and that's all great. Farmer's market I'd actually recommend better than just going to the grocery store. But what happens when those supply chains are gone? Mm-hmm. And you haven't got skills for planting and growing?
This is the way we think, Beuna. We're on the viewpoint of, okay, when everything collapses, how are you going to support yourself? And I know that you're more on, okay, this is how we live every day. We've changed our lifestyle. This is how we live. We grow our own stuff, just as they did 100 years ago or less, rather than, okay, this is what we're going to do when everything collapses.
Right. And I am a prepper, too.
Okay.
My parents always stored food, and we went camping sometimes, and I would say I'm more of a prepper than they are, because there's all kinds of things besides food that you need to know how to do and have access to, no matter what happens. And some people say, it's never going to happen. Well, during my lifetime, I've seen truck strikes. I've seen lots of things I've never personally experienced, like hurricanes. Mm-hmm. Why would somebody think it can't happen?
Absolutely.
And I've been in a hurricane, I've been in tropical storm, and I've been in tornadoes. I've also been in tiny, tiny earthquakes. Nothing, damaging other than something falling off of a wall. But the reality is if something happens, like the tornado that I was in Florida was probably the worst of all the disasters I've been through, and it blocked off streets. The debris, it tore out houses. I mean, people died. And what people don't realize is that's the kind of disaster that we talk more about than anything else. We're not talking, global pandemic. We're not talking, EMP. I mean, well, I kind of am. EMP could happen. For those not familiar with what that is, it's an electromagnetic pulse. Easiest way to do it is a nuke set off in the upper atmosphere. Boom, there goes all your electronics. Goodbye cars. Anything prior to 86 might have a chance of still running. May need a little work, but
solar flare.
But another one is a solar flare, can cause an EMP, but basically goodbye all microelectronics and small chip circuitry. Whew. Hello, new world of 19-nothing. It's back to the early 1800s.
Yes.
Well, and I've been through a divorce and brief periods of unemployment, even things like that.
Absolutely. So why is gardening good for those types of situations?
Well, this time of year, and you're not really going to find a lot outside to eat, of course, but we have a lot of months where you can have stuff in your yard that you grow that can be ready to harvest different times of the season. If you know how to freeze, can, dehydrate, any of those things to preserve it for later.
And that was
you
the
need
norm.
to learn that now.
That was the norm, right? Because you grow everything through the summer as much as you can. You've got your root cellar. You bury your potatoes. You take everything down into the cellar where it's nice and cool, and can all you can until all the way through winter. And hopefully you can barter with some neighbors or whatever and get some other things that you need and make it through the winter until spring comes around when your crops are growing.
Yes.
So I remember my grandparents, up until about 15, well, not even that, like 10 years ago, were gardeners, like big time. I mean, they had, my dad's parents had a 60, probably by 60 row garden. And they just, every spring, boom, they're out plowing, and they had their cute little plow that they had. It was, a hand plow. And it was just beautiful. And I remember picking the raspberries, picking, snap peas, picking everything with my grandma, corn, and then we'd can it, and then that's what we'd eat for Sunday dinners when I'd come over on every other weekend. That's what we'd be eating. And then on the other side of the family, my grandpa did the same thing on my mom's side, but his garden was maybe 20 by 20. But it was a religion for him almost. It was more than just gardening. It was his way of getting calm.
It's a lifestyle. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You
And I think that the majority of Americans, it's my guess, the majority of Americans have never experienced that, have never felt that joy, I guess you would call it, in growing your own food and harvesting it, eating it, and taking care of it, something like that, rather than just sitting in front of a computer.
Absolutely.
And my family, we never canned, so I didn't know anything about canning till later, and I started doing it myself, and I actually haven't done it for a while. But I freeze and dehydrate a lot of things. And, of course, if it's in the freezer and the power's out, then that's a problem.
Right.
But I know how to do all those things, which I think is really important to at least learn how. Even if you don't want to start with canning, start with dehydrating or freezing.
Absolutely. And I think those are lost arts. I mean, those are arts that we need to start practicing as people. Turn off the football game, turn off the soap opera, turn off the TV. Just turn it off. Go spend an hour to 2 hours a day doing something that's going to give you skills.
Turning over some dirt.
Yeah, dirt. Learn what it takes. I mean, for someone that's brand new at this, wanting to start a garden, where would you recommend they start?
Well, look at my website. That's a good place. But
Perfect.
The soil is really important. The quality of the soil, there's nutrients, microorganisms, all these things in the soil. Adding organic matter is the best thing you can do for your soil. Mm-hmm. So you can make your own compost, which is a good thing to do. If you can't get enough, it takes a little while to make your own compost. Get it from other places. You want to be really careful about what it is. If it's biosolids, which will either be on a bag if you buy a bag of it, or you can ask what it is. Some of it from the dump here has biosolids in it.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
It means composted human waste.
Waste, yeah.
And so they take some of the dumps take all the plant material people bring in, and then they bring in sewage sludge and mix it in.
Mix it together.
And you won't know that unless you ask them. But always read the label on bags of compost to make sure that that's what it is, because some things say compost and they're just chicken manure with synthetic fertilizers in it, and the synthetic fertilizers are damaging the microorganisms. So it's
now, I know our soils vary along the Wasatch Front here. I've got a lot of clay where I live, so it's a lot of work to try and get my soils my plants to grow. Certain things grow really well, like my raspberries grow great. So how do we go about that? What's the best way to go about
and some people have a lot of sand.
Garden? Okay.
So in either case, organic matter is the best thing to add, either way.
Okay.
And with square foot gardening, which you don't have to garden that way, and I don't grow everything that way, but you build a raised bed out of wood that is not pressure treated, no railroad ties.
I've used block.
That's fine if you want to do that. You don't have any treated wood at all if you're making it out of wood,
like the pressure treated stuff that they use for
because that's got that's very high
chemicals.
So I did mine wrong last year or 3 years ago. I used pressure treated 2x10s.
Okay,
and but I did put cardboard lining between those and everything else that had plastic on one side, just as a weed barrier. But that's wrong, isn't it?
Well, pressure-treated wood, the old kind, had arsenic in it.
Right now, it's new as copper.
The newer kind is very, very high in copper. We need some copper, certainly, but I don't think any of that is good for the plants and certainly not for us.
Okay.
So we are running into a break. Okay. When we get back, let's talk about the square foot gardening. We are here with Beuna. She is amazing. We're talking gardening, edible landscapes, and this is your best way to survive the apocalypse. We'll be right back. You're listening to K-Talk, AM 630. Hey, welcome back to PrepperCon Radio on AM 630. As always, it's Scott and Shane, and we are talking today about gardening, edible landscapes. We've got Beuna here, and she is the queen of all things growing, in my opinion. We were talking about box gardens and how I did mine wrong. So non-treated woods, so like redwood, would be good, or
redwood, cedar. Most of mine
cedar?
are out of Douglas fir because in this climate, since it's usually pretty dry and not a big termite problem, I've had mine for years.
A long time.
Okay.
Because I would have stayed away from pine or fir personally. That's what my first thought would be, being a bit of a contractor building with those types of woods.
But redwood and cedar will last longer.
Right. But they are more expensive, obviously.
Right.
Spare no expense. I want to live. Right. Okay. Maybe
well,
not
if fir
spare
is
no
good.
expense,
Then let's just use fir.
Okay. So you get your box garden. How wide should it be? Does it really matter?
So it shouldn't be any. The creator figured out that if it's 4 feet wide, anybody of any size can reach into it from all the way around the outside. You mentioned earlier your grandparents plowing. I've never tilled. I don't intend to ever till. If you want to do that, great, but it's actually not good for the soil, and then you have to worry about a tiller and all that.
And obviously, you have to do it when it's at the right humidity, right moisture in the soil, right? Otherwise, you're just making a mess with
if it's too
your
wet or
dirt
dry, it's a
clods
problem.
and such.
But with square foot gardening, you actually fill the box with compost, peat moss, and vermiculite mixed together.
Okay.
If you go to squarefootgardening.org or come to one of my classes, that's one of the classes I teach. You can learn more about it.
Like I say, that's the most critical part, is getting your soils right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But once you have it set up, there's not much to it. The setup's the beginning part, and you can plant peas without having to wait for the soil to dry out so you can till.
Because, it's February now, and we're coming up onto, if we can get free of the snow, we can start planting some peas, right?
In March.
In March.
1st of March.
Yep.
All right, well, let's take a caller. Hey, caller, you're on the air. What's your question today?
I'd like to talk to your plant specialist.
Yeah, you're on the air.
You're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, I think you're giving out bad information or the wrong impression when you say that if soil has certain chemicals or elements in it, that they may be bad to plants in. For instance, if you have high arsenic or high lead in a soil and you plant tomatoes in it, the tomatoes that are grown in there will not have an excessively high concentration of arsenic or lead. Plants take into themselves what they need normally, if it's available. And just because there's high lead doesn't mean your tomatoes will have high lead.
What's your comment on that, Beuna?
Well, it may not mean that, but another thing it can do is actually stunt the growth or cause problems with the growth of the plant itself.
Can it cause them to get funguses or
well, it could
viruses?
cause an imbalance of the chemicals or the minerals and things in the plant. Also, what if you have lettuce and some of that soil splashes up on the leaf? And, sure, you can wash it off. I think it's just better to try to avoid all that. I had somebody tell me that she bought 2 kits for raised bed gardens, and she didn't know, but she bought one and it was pressure-treated wood, and then later bought another one that was cedar. And she planted them at the same time. She put the same plants in both of them. She didn't know anything about it at the time, but she told me all the plants in the one with pressure-treated wood were stunted.
Wow.
That's really important to know. Thank you, caller, for calling in. Yeah, so it may not affect the food as far as it'll still grow. It'll pull the nutrients it's pulling is what it sounds like. But it will most likely stunt it.
It could cause problems.
There's challenges.
And I just wouldn't want to take the chance because I'm not going to test everything I eat for arsenic and lead.
And so it's better to be safe than sorry.
Obviously, if you can build your own square foot garden, do it right. But I've used in my own square foot garden, I've used some of my native soils and brought in some other compost and such to mix with it. So to an extent, you use what you have. I mean, you do what you.
Well,
do
it's
what you have,
actually better not to use your soil.
Okay.
Because if you have weed seeds in there or weed roots, or you have drainage problems or rocks, you're going to still have that in your raised bed. Where if you start with basically a new soil,
whole new soil,
then you're not going to have those issues.
And I screened mine, got the rocks out. And
did you get the weed seeds out?
I did pretty good. It didn't really have any weeds come up in my garden. It was
good.
really good.
And one thing is, when you grow in a container or a pot, which a raised bed is essentially a big pot or container, if you're using just garden soil, there's usually drainage problems. Things don't tend to drain as well.
Okay.
Good to know. Okay, let's change a little bit topics here. So if you want to learn more about the gardening aspect, go to gardeninspire.com. How often do you have classes?
Well, my first one for the season is actually tonight. I'm teaching a seed starting class at Woods Cross High.
All right, get to Woods Cross tonight. What time?
It's at 7:30, and it's $10, and you pay them because it's through the adult community school, and you can show up tonight and pay them tonight. And I'm going to be having classes for the next 5 Wednesdays. All of that stuff is on my calendar if it's open to the public.
Awesome.
Whether it's a class at PrepperCon or whatever. I also do private classes. So if somebody wants to have their friends, family, neighbors, whatever together to do a class, you can contact me and schedule that.
Awesome. Let's take one more caller, and then we're going to switch subjects on you a little bit. Hey, thanks for calling into K-Talk. You're on the air. What have you got for us today?
Well, whatever we have to put up with in, this country as far as soils and stuff, it's still better than down in Mexico. Some of the farmers down there to raise their tomatoes are using sewer water.
Oh, nasty!
And they ship them.
It's always safer to use your own resources. You know what you grow it in. It's always easier to eat.
Well, those tomatoes have been shipped up here for years.
That's a good point.
Yeah, Utah tomatoes, in my opinion, are much better, and brings up a great question. What about water? Obviously, you use culinary water. It's got your chlorine in it. How does that affect? What's a better way to water?
I used to grow like a 3/4 acre garden, and I had 500 tomato plants alone, and squash, and a 1/4 acre of corn and stuff. But it grew for quite a few years, and I used to just give it away when stuff was cheap.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s and stuff.
Well, I think that brings up a good point. Is if you're growing foods, like I did this last year I didn't grow, but the year before, in the last 2 years before that. When you're growing and you get an excess of something, that's a trade tool. You were giving it away, but now, like, if things get tough, say you're better at growing squash than all your neighbors, you're trading your squash for lettuce or tomatoes or something else that somebody else might have a little bit of a greener thumb for.
I had 4 or 5 bushels of tomatoes every other day to get rid of, so.
Put me on your list.
The kids would go out there and sell some corn on the road, They had a little stand that they did, and people would buy some of that. But this is like, 25 years ago or 20 years ago at least.
Well, we need to get people moving back in that same direction.
Vegetables are a lot more expensive now, so, Anyway, that's what I thought. The tomatoes out of these foreign countries, the vegetables and produce out of these foreign countries, I think we ought to be a little leery.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your call. We appreciate you. All right, let's switch gears. We've got your book here on the counter. We've also got your, I don't even know what you want to call it, your index card ring. Let's talk about those for a second, and then talk about wild edibles. That ring, it's a concept right now. You're in the process of building it. Tell us what it is, because that really inspires me. Wait, Garden Inspire. There you go.
Well, let me talk about the books for a second, because that started first. So I wrote a book about herbs several years ago and had it as an ebook. And then about a year ago, I ran into somebody I'd known before, hadn't seen for a while. She's a master herbalist. She asked me to write a book with her. And so we wrote the book about wild medicinal and edible plants, Herbs to Know Too. And those are plants you can find in Utah, and a lot of them you can find in other parts of the world, but it tells how to use them medicinally, how to eat them, how to grow them, how to identify them, and it has a nice color picture. And then we wrote Herbs to Grow, which those are plants that you would have to plant. So a lot of the culinary herbs, but also saffron, almonds, which both grow here along the Wasatch Front, and things that people are less familiar with, but it has the same kind of information. And then I was thinking, hey, what if I made kind of a card deck of the wild plants? And I have a picture on the front and on a color picture, and on the back it just tells brief information, the name of the plant, how to use it medicinally, how to eat it, how to identify it, more condensed information. So you could use them kind of as a card game at home. You could put the cards out and people have to guess what that is, and then they turn over, oh, I'm right or I'm wrong or whatever. But they go on a ring so that you can actually take them with you hiking or camping in your bug out bag, whatever.
That's fantastic. I'm thumbing through your Herbs to Know Too book, and being an outdoorsman and loving to hike, I recognize the majority of these plants, which I knew a little bit about because of our good buddy Dan, who's a wild edible guy, but so detailed, great pictures, and a wonderful binder. This is really a quality book that I'm going to buy from you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Well, it's funny because we look at all these online resources so often. They're great. They're quick, quick access. But there's something about a book, just the weight of it, the ability to carry it with you. Yep. I love having libraries. I'm so excited. Everyone that keeps hearing me talk about my house we just bought, that's ridiculous.
Scott, cut it out.
I'm excited because after living in a small basement apartment while we were looking for our house, I'm so excited to be able to go back and garden this year, to landscape, to put together my library. And I've got books sitting in the garage in boxes, and I'm just like, I could just open it up, but I can't get to it because there's stacks and stacks of boxes. It's so important that we hold on to those things, because that is where you get your knowledge. It's not just surfing the web. That gives you just a little bits and pieces. But when you devour a book, man, you hold that knowledge a lot better. I think there's something about that physical interaction, holding the book, reading the book, flipping through the pages. I've always retained more from an actual book than I have reading online.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you about the library aspect. That's one thing that I've been writing about and working on building as well, is an actual physical library of books. So when the power goes out, you don't have your access to your internet anymore, and like we're talking today is grow a garden, and we're moving back towards our roots, toward the way our ancestors lived, and books were so incredibly valuable back then.
Well, and we have these as ebooks, but awesome. Ideally you want the physical book, because if you're somewhere where you don't have a connection or something happens and your ebooks are gone, you still have this.
Well, I'm flipping through here, and all of these, it's huge value. Saffron, oak and scrub oak, lungwort, horehound. All these things, I'm not seeing a money tree, so I'm a little confused. So there's no way to identify a money tree or plant or grow a money tree?
Well, there is a house plant that's called that, but I don't think it's edible at all.
Dang it. Well, for folks, you heard it here. There is no such thing as a money tree. Tell your kids and grandkids. But you know what? There's a lot of value in growing a garden. There's a lot of value in understanding what's out in the wild and what you can eat. Get these books. Check out gardeninspire.com. I think this is one of the lost bits of knowledge that people need to really regain right now.
That is extremely critical.
Well, and one thing with edible landscaping, it isn't just about having a square-foot garden or however you want to do it. You can have a lot of different plants in your landscape in place of ornamental plants. Not that I grow lilac because I like it. Mm-hmm. But I have other things. Some of them are plants some people have never heard of, which the advantage is I have a lot of variety, but if somebody wanted to steal from my yard because things are bad, some of that stuff they wouldn't even know was edible. Yeah. And if this crop fails this year, then the other one might be just fine.
Yeah.
And all of these plants are they're perennials, correct? All of these native plants?
They're not.
They're not?
But quite a few of them are. The ones in the wild edibles, you could plant some of those in your yard if you wanted to. Some of them are probably there and you call them weeds. Mm-hmm. But some of them are attractive. Some of them people plant in their yard as an ornamental and don't even know that they can eat them.
So what about dandelions? I'm happy to just leave those if it's an ornamental.
Well, as long as you didn't poison them with something or whatever, contaminate them somehow, the whole plant is really good for you and edible. And it was brought here on purpose. Yeah. And purslane's one in there that's a flat growing weed that's really good for you, and other cultures know how to use it, and it tastes good.
And it's a weed for us. We just spray it and poison it and dig it up. And
it's amazing how much we waste on just square footage of Kentucky bluegrass.
Yep.
Yes.
It's water hungry, and it doesn't give us anything but sometimes a green, sometimes a yellow yard, right? The idea behind being more self-reliant, being better prepared, is to have an edible landscape, to have those resources, to actually, if you're going to water your yard, water it for food. Have Absolutely. It be something you can use. That's our message today is really, as you're thinking about spring, as you're thinking about what am I going to do this next year, start small. Start with a square-foot garden, right? Maybe, attend one of these classes, go to gardeninspire.com, attend the classes, learn about it. If you want your own private class or private consultation, come Can they just request that through the website, or do you have
They can contact me through my website.
That's the best way to go, guys. Listen to what we're talking about. Whether you're preparing for the apocalypse or preparing for just the daily disasters, you need to start gardening. I think that's one of the most important things that everyone needs to be doing. Understand what you have, but also understand what's out in the wild. Go find, take the crazy trail hikes and go find the wild edibles.
We talk a lot about having food storage, and we will continue to talk about having your food storage, but you also need to plan on supplementing that.
Well, and besides that, if you're living on beans and wheat, which I like, but how about flavoring for them too?
Absolutely, your herbs. That's a whole other thing we can talk about is your how to grow herbs.
Right.
Your flavoring, absolutely.
Sounds like we're trailing off. Absolutely. No, guys, this has been fun. Thank you so much for being on with us today. We really appreciate you. We're looking forward to having you at PrepperCon, April 15th and 16th, which is coming up. And so you're gonna have classes in the evenings. And do you know what topic you're going to be discussing yet?
No, I'd be happy to hear ideas of what people would like to hear, but.
All right, we're going to pose that question on Facebook. So go to PrepperCon on Facebook, and we're going to have a post there in the next 5 minutes. And comment on that. Tell us what you want to learn more about at PrepperCon, and we'll make it be taught. We'll make it so. All right, stay tuned. You're listening to AM 630 K-Talk, the first, only, and best two-way talk radio station in Utah, broadcasting to the world from the Rocky Mountains. Okay, so Armageddon's not here, but we are. We are PrepperCon Radio on K-Talk, AM 630. You can find us on Facebook, K-Talk Utah. Find us on Twitter, that's KTKK, K-Talk. And you can find us right here on AM 630 everywhere. You can tune in online at k-talk.com. Download the app. You can listen to us anywhere. We get good reception here in northern Utah, but outside of that, you want to have the app. So when you travel, you can stay tuned in.
Oh, yeah, it's great. I love the app. Listen to it anywhere.
We've been lucky today. We've had Beuna's been here talking. She's from Garden Inspire. She's going to be at PrepperCon, just one of the many instructors at PrepperCon this year. If you're not familiar with what it is all about self-reliance, preparedness. And we're not just your grandma's standard preparedness expo.
That's a good way to explain the other ones.
We tried to do this in a different way. Here's my background, and here's why we're doing this. I've been prepping since I was 13. Somehow they decided to put me on the radio, so here I am. But I'm not the expert, and I'll never claim to be the expert. I'm a big fan of prepping. It hasn't always been called prepping for me. Prepping's been a term used since World War II, but here's the reality is it's just smart living. Being more involved in your daily decisions, not just being reliant on everyone else. Learning skills and traits that will get you through disasters like joblessness. It's good to have food storage, good to have a garden, good to have money saved away so that if you lose your job, you're not freaking out. You've got time to go find another job.
So it's not actually a disaster.
It's not. Yeah, it doesn't become a disaster. You're averting the disaster before it comes. That's what got me into preparedness. That's what got me into prepping. And people would always ask me, "Hey, Scott, can I just come to your house when the crap hits the fan?" And I'd laugh. I'm like, "No,
like you're joking, right?"
Like the real situation is, I don't have the resources for everybody. I wish I did. I wish I could, but it's just not feasible. On my income, I can't afford to take care of the world. I can't afford to take care of all my extended family, but I can help. I can teach. I can bring in the experts that I follow, and that's where the idea for PrepperCon came was, how can we make a fun and exciting forum for people to come and learn, to be entertained, and to get the right gear? So PrepperCon was founded on these three principles: to entertain, to educate, and to outfit. So we did a little different. We kind of pulled the Comic-Con spin. We bring in survival stars from TV, famous preppers, and then we also bring in all the amazing, we've got the celebrities, but then we've also got the amazing educators, like Beuna's one of them. We've got first aid classes, from suturing to basic first aid. Suturing's pretty advanced, but it's important to know what to do. Pathfinding skills, how to understand what's wild, what you can eat out in the wild. Dan,
Yep.
he came in last year, phenomenal classes. Did a snare building class, did a shelter building class, fire building class. Those are skills that are becoming lost arts that you never know when you're going to need them.
I'll tell you what's becoming a lost art is navigating.
Orienteering
in particular. But, everyone is so handicapped using their phones, using their navigation part of their phones, turning on the GPS and letting it tell them where to go, where to turn. And that is, for me, has been just a very basic, very essential skill my entire life and I've just started using GPS really within the last year when I don't know exactly where that particular location
Absolutely.
I'm going to is.
And those land skills, navigation, it's not hard to learn. It just takes time. And you can come learn that at PrepperCon. I mean, you can learn everything and anything you need to know. If you don't have a clue on where to get started, PrepperCon has the basics. If you're advanced, PrepperCon has that as well. This is a community event. It's a Utah event. We are the largest preparedness expo in the world. I'm going to throw that out there. I haven't seen anything bigger. I haven't seen anything better. I know that for sure.
If anybody knows of anything,
please let us know.
Please let us know because, we're going to take that title.
We want it to be the one-stop shop for anybody that's interested in prepping. It's fun. You get to meet with like-minded people. You learn a lot from not just the exhibitors and the classes, but from each other. I mean, I had great conversations with people last year about what they were looking for and what was missing. We didn't have aquaponics last year. We didn't have hydroponics last year. We wanted that, but we just didn't have enough time to get those companies in there.
Ran out of space, too.
We didn't have container homes, which we wanted, but we had tiny homes. We had bunkers. We had geodesic domes. I mean, we had a lot of great things. So I would highly recommend right now, hop online, preppercon.com. Get your discounted tickets early. They're on sale online. You can save $2 to $4 on tickets just by going to our website now. If you want to get involved in a deeper level, you want to
volunteer.
You just want to be a volunteer, be part of the big group. We have the most amazing people helping out to make PrepperCon happen. We do this almost completely out of the goodness of our hearts. We really don't make any money doing it. And so volunteers are our lifeblood, and we are desperately needing more volunteers. Volunteers, you'll get a 2-day pass. You'll get T-shirts and swag, our undying gratitude, and access to all the celebrities and everything else. Sign up. Go to preppercon.com. Click on the volunteer page. Sign up. We've got 6-hour shifts, and then the rest of the time is yours. Go have fun. Go learn. Take the classes. We need people to help out with the classrooms. We need people to help out with ticketing, with security, to help us man the hurricane simulator, which is the coolest thing. We've got a lot of fun things going on. We've got Prepper Fash, which is a fashion show. It's probably the most modest fashion show you'll ever see. People wearing full outfits.
Ghillie suits where you even see a bit of skin.
Camo. We poke fun at the apocalypse. We'll have people in radiation suits and hazmat suits, and it's a lot of fun. We also showcase some of the coolest new technologies, wearable gear, backpacks, bulletproof vests, anything and everything. We want it to be fun. I guarantee if you come to PrepperCon, it will amaze you in one way.
One thing I really noticed last year at PrepperCon is that many of the expos I've been to, whether it's an outdoors expo or whatever that I'm really into, I really enjoy that arena. I still walk through and I'm still kind of bored. Like, okay, I've seen that. That's cool. And I spend maybe a few hours there and I'm gone. Pick up a few materials and I'm out. It seemed to me that people hung around for half the day, all day. They were there at the free classes, and we'll have a lot of free classes. Some are paid, obviously, but they were there just talking with others, and it was a great place to meet the community, the prepping community.
Yeah, it's the funnest place to go get engrossed into prepping. Prepping, survival, bushcrafting. If those are your things, you need to be at PrepperCon. You need to come meet us. Come have a lot of fun with us. This is a community event. This is the best way. If you are a hardcore prepper and you're trying to figure out how to get your family to wake up, this is the best way to do it. If you're just waking up and saying, wow, I need to be more self-reliant, you need to get here and drag all of your friends here because this is the funnest way to educate them.
Yeah, it's time to get serious. I think a lot of people are waking up to what preppers are, what they stand for, and turning back to our roots of growing our own foods and being more self-reliant. But are you really making taking the steps, making the actions that are going to get you more prepared and have you the knowledge to get you through an apocalypse. And we make fun of the apocalypse, we poke fun at it, but we also take it somewhat seriously.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're worried about the economy, which you should be, if you're not paying attention to that, for shame on you. You need to be aware of what's going on. Maybe you don't need to be worried about it, but you need to be aware. You need to be aware of what's going on politically, because there are things in the works that are scary, but you can eliminate a lot of that fear through preparation. If you're a spiritual person, if you turn to the scriptures, we hear often, so very often, if you are prepared, you shall not fear. That's a promise from God. This is why we prep. This is why we do what we do. This is why we have our radio show. It's so that we can help eliminate fear. This is the hope-bringing event.
And this is why
the fun, exciting way to get serious about things that you should have been serious about years ago if you haven't already done it. Better resources, better tools, better gear. I mean, one of our sponsors this year, we've got a few amazing ones, actually quite a dozen amazing ones so far, and we've got more coming. One of them, Stealth Gear, stealthgearusa.com. These guys have the best holster systems I've seen. They're coming in. They're going to show off their cool stuff. They've got these Kydex holsters, which are absolutely the most comfortable holster. I've actually fallen asleep, rolled over on my holster, and I didn't even know my gun was there. And I'm just
which can be a little dangerous there, Scott.
Could be dangerous. I felt safe because
if you forget it's there, that's...
Well, it wasn't that I forgot I was there. I just was so tired. I fell asleep and rolled over on it, woke up, and I'm like...
Oh, yeah.
A prior holster, it was digging into my hip, and I'm like, that's not good. This one, no problem. They're going to be there. They've got amazing gear. Come see those guys at their booth. They've also got some swag that they'll be giving out to customers.
And the best part, they're local.
They're local.
They're made in American Fork. They're a Utah company, and they're cool guys, and help support local business.
Absolutely, and that's most of the companies at PrepperCon are local. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've got Grab and Go Food Storage, local, right out of Salt Lake. They'll be there. We've got another food storage company, Valley Food Storage, local. They're going to be there. They're one of our sponsors. Their food tastes great. Grab and Go and Valley Foods are some of my favorite foods. We've also got Utah Safe Shelter. Utah Safe Haven. Okay, if you're looking for a bug out location, if you're trying to figure out where do I go when the crap hits the fan, you need to talk to them now and get some land set aside. They've got in-house financing. They're one of our sponsors. They're going to be there. They're going to have an awesome booth. I'm super excited.
UtahSafehaven.com.
UtahSafehaven.com. You're going to hear their commercials on our station coming up. Fantastic group. They're part of Mountain West Ranches. They've got land all over Utah, recreational land. You can make it your bug-out location.
And that's what will be one of our topics in the coming weeks is bugging out, bug-out bags, locations, vehicles, all that fun stuff.
So stay tuned, stay part of it, get involved. Go to the website, preppercon.com, get involved, be a volunteer, buy your tickets and be there. Great gift for family and friends. Let them wake up to it on their own. Bring them along, and they'll have fun. They'll have their aha moment at PrepperCon. I had so many conversations with people as they're walking out that I'd ask one question. Did you find anything or learn anything new today? And the response every time was, yes, absolutely. One guy told me he was walking through. He'd planned on just coming because he'd heard about it from a neighbor. He's like, yeah, I'll check it out. And he said, I was blown away. I didn't know what I didn't know when I got here. I was absolutely blown away with all the amazing things, and I ended up getting food storage solutions and everything else that I needed that I didn't know I needed. So get there. Come have fun with us. It's going to be a blast. It's April 15th and 16th at the Southtown Expo Center. Thanks for tuning in today on K-Talk Radio. We're signing off, and have a great week.